that exit.
There you go.
Cool. So I'm sodium hydrogen, or Mike Julander. This is my fourth DEF CON, not DEF CON, SAINTCON, and I've been playing around with hardware for like 6 years. Got into Arduinos while I was in high school, and I've been playing with it since then. And 2 years ago, they introduced the mini badge spec, and it had I2C, which not very many of you know, or if you do, here's just a quick refresher.
Ask them.
What?
Ask them, does anybody know?
Well, I guess it's up here, but does anybody really know much about I2C? Okay, so it's a way for chips to communicate to each other. So here, this UC device right here, that's your master or the badge, and then it uses a data and a clock line to communicate over a single bus to a bunch of different devices. And so in our case, you have your badge and then your mini badges. And so this can be used to display messages and stuff on the badge with just the mini badge. So like, for example, many of you have already played around with your badge, and for you to display your name or handle, you have to set it in the menu, and then you have to come into the screen and only scroll that. And so I've been playing around with this, and so right now it's doing the rain effect, and so if we wait a little bit, it will eventually say mic. It'll just flash on. Okay. And so that is because this SAINTCON Labs mini badge that I have is telling it to do that. And so just a little bit more about the I2C protocol, because you kind of have to understand this a little bit before you start using it. You have the clock, and so that's just oscillating, telling all the mini badges when they should read and when they shouldn't. And so, it's just a clock pulse from the badge. You don't need to do anything with that, but then this data is where it gets important. So the badge sends out a start condition and then an address. And this is why you can have so many different chips on the I2C bus, is because they all have different addresses. And so it'll send out the address, and then the mini badge will respond with this acknowledgement bit. And so that's just the mini badge pulling the data line low. And then once there's that acknowledgement, then the main badge can start requesting or sending data to the mini badge. And then that's kind of how this handshake works. And so now a little bit about the Buspirate, the tool that I chose to use. So this is what the Buspirate 3.6 or 3.5 looks like. You can get one online for like 30 bucks. And they're super useful because they support many different kinds of communication, and you can use them to debug circuits. And it's it doesn't go above 4 megahertz, but it is a logic analyzer, so you can capture a little bit of your communication for debugging more complex circuits. And I decided to make my own version. So this is my Tron badge that I took to DEF CON 27, and it has an integrated Buspirate. And so for anyone who decides to do the Hacker Lab that will be opening up here in a little bit, you will be using one of those Tron badges because it's already set up for mini badges. And so it's still a Buspirate, and it still works the same. So any questions you have about the Tron badge, you can just replace it with Buspirate when you do the Hacker Lab. And so how do you connect to this? So there's 3 really common tools. I use Minicom on Linux most often, but PuTTY is a free download on Windows, and you don't have to install anything. You just run an executable, and it's super easy to set up. And then all other NIC systems usually have a program called Screen installed that you can run from the command line, and you can use that to interface with the Buspirate. Or if you have another serial interface, you can use that. And so, some important things when you connect using anything, you need to set the device address, which on Windows is going to be a COM port, and you can find that in Device Manager. And in Linux or Mac, it's going to be a dev port, so /dev/TTY. Usually it's USB. And then the baud rate, which I'll put this in the guide, but the baud rate for a Buspirate by default is always 1152.00, and you can change that, but anytime you plug Buspirate back in, it's going to automatically reset back to that. So that's a little bit about what it is. So now let's do a live demo. So here I just have the putty that I just downloaded. So we'll put this in serial mode down here, and then we can open up Device Manager to see what COM port my Buspirate's on. So here we can see it, the Silicon Labs, it's on COM5. So we can set this to COM5, and then that 1152.00 speed, and we'll hit open. And now, when I hit enter, see the HIZ, we're connected to the Buspirate, just like that. And so, let me take this mini badge out and put it in the Buspirate. So, really quick, the Buspirate, if you type question mark, it gives you this nice little printout. And so, currently it's in HIZ mode, which you can tell by the input line, and so we want to be in I2C mode. So to do that, you're going to see this M change mode command. So we're going to hit M, and it's going to list all the different options. Again, we're looking at I2C because that's what this mini badge uses. So we hit 4 to choose that, and then we can just hit enter again. We don't need to set any of that. And so now we're ready to go with I2C. And so again, another tool the Buspirate has, let me bring the help menu back up, is it has macros. And so those are things that are custom to each communication protocol. And we'll change on that. So we can list them all right here. And we only have 2 with I2C, and that's an address search and a sniffer. And so if you don't know the address of your device, because that is important for talking to them, you're going to want to find out what that address is. So you can run an address search really quick, and it found one device, and each device has 2 addresses, a read and a write address. And so our write address is A0 in hex, and our write address is A1 in hex. So to read from the mini badge, we will send, as you can see in this protocol interactions, you have your start right here, and that's an open bracket, so that will send the start condition that I was talking about earlier. And then here's where you send that address. So if we want to read, then we'll send A1. And then here in our protocol interactions, we have R for read. So I'll type R and hit enter, and it returns a 4. You know, which doesn't mean a lot, but that means we're talking, because it would be 255 if we weren't. So that's nice and all, but now we need to figure out how to use it. So I've gone and figured out the data sheets for the chip that this is using already. So to set it, the EEPROM is a sequential read. So an EEPROM is an electronically erasable programmable read-only memory. And what that basically means is you can write things to it and you can erase things from it, and when you power cycle it, it still saves it all, which is really convenient for information. And so this specific one, it will always do a sequential read. So if you give it, when you read, the next time you read, it's going to do the next byte in its memory, and then the next time the next byte. And so when you want to read something specific, you have to send the address, or whenever you write, you have to send the start address that you want to read from. And so that's the first 2 bytes of writing. And so here I'll type the write address, which is A0, and by default, everything we're going to be doing is going to be in the very first bit of memory in the EEPROM. So it's really nice, you just have to type 0 space 0. So that's the first address. And so we'll type that to target it, and then we can read from it after we put it there. So let's type A1 and type read, and this time let's read like 20 things from the memory. So I'll do semicolon 20, which will allow me to read 20 times, repeat that instruction 20 times, and then I'll do the end bit. And so here we're actually executing 2 different commands in the same one. We're sending a start, the address, and then 2 zeros, and then we're ending that. And then we're starting a new one, sending it to the read address, and then we're requesting 20 different things from it, and then we're ending. And so if I run this, that's a lot of stuff, but see, you can see this 2, you got your 4, and then you have this 4D, 6-9, so this is ASCII basically. And if I put the Buspirate in text mode and rerun that command, you can now see the M-I-K-E. And as you saw earlier, there was a 4, and so that means this message is for long. And so that's how the badge knows to read, is because it can see the 4, and then it can read that out of the memory. And so a little bit about this protocol I'm using. We'll have to go over to CompuKid Mike's 2018 GitHub and go to mini badges. So this is the message protocol for the badge. And because we're using an EEPROM, we can only support those protocols. So, wait, nope, never mind. We can support these protocols. And so, basically what it does, the badge will read, and depending on one of these things, it'll react. So, if that very first bit, which you saw mine was set to a 2, this one, if it's set to a 0, the badge just doesn't care anymore and just gives up. If it's set to a 1, it's going to think a button was pressed on the mini badge, which could change something in the actual badge. If it's 2, a text message will be displayed, and then it requires the text length of the message you want to send, and then following that is the ASCII text. And so that's what we care about. I don't think this year has the pixel message set up. I didn't see that when I got recruited to help with the badge, so I do not believe there's any of that. And so we won't care about these last 3. We just care about this 2 right here, which is the text message. And so now that we have that, we can come back to here. And so now let's say we want to actually set something in memory. How do we do that? So you're going to start with your write address, which is A0 in this case. And then you want to set it back at the beginning, which is 2 zeros. And then we're going to send a 2 to indicate that we want to send a text message. And now we have to decide what we're writing, because we have to get the length before we actually write it. And so, we could do, let's do hello world. So, hello world, and I'm going to come back in and count this and figure out the lengths of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this is 11 long. And so that should be all you need to write. So our address, our location, and then we're going to say text message. It's 11 characters long, and then our thing, which you can throw the quotes up and just type the ASCII text, so you don't need to do the conversion yourself, which is really nice. And then you hit enter, and it sends out the command. And so now we can check to see if it worked with the badge.
So the sizes are decimal, not hex?
What?
The size is in decimal?
So everything we're doing is in 1 byte of memory. So that's why the address we had to send 2. So you have 2 bytes. So that can, I don't remember how big 2 bytes can be. Let's bring up the calculator. So 2 bytes can be all of these. Yeah, so that it can get to a rather large number with 2 bytes, but because we're only working with 1, the maximum the maximum allowed is going to be your 255. For those who know binary, so see if I type 255, they're all ones. So that's the largest you can set for a text message length, which will take quite a while because you have to wait for 255 characters to scroll across the screen.
But I noticed when you send the size, you send it in decimal. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, so you can send decimal, octal, hex. The Buspirate supports all of those. And so, you know, why do the conversion? Yeah, so you can do up to 255 if you don't want to. And you can type in decimal, which makes it really nice. So if we plug this in, we get hello world. And then when this is done, it goes back to the screen. So now we have 2 messages being displayed, which is really awesome. Now we can have our cake and eat it. And so that's really nice. And now we're going to use the other thing, the actual reading and, well, the actual sniffer. So that was really, that's pretty cool and a fun little parlor trick, being like, hey look, I can have my message and I can have my animations at the same time. But now this is how you can use the Buspirate to hack into things. So this won't be part of the lab, but if you buy your own Buspirate, you can easily do this at home. So I'm going to take a little ribbon cable and get some little clips so I can plug it in. So we'll just plug this cable into the Buspirate. And if you ever have any questions about what pins this means, this is a fairly standard common for the, this is a fairly common cable for the Buspirate, so you can hit B in the version 3 Buspirates, and it will actually tell you the color mapping to it, which is super ultra nice. You don't have to memorize all that. So we have brown is ground, so we need to tie ground. And then we have purple as our clock, and gray as our data. So we'll connect this, and then we'll take the badge, and we'll connect our ground to the ground of a mini badge so we can read from it. And the mini badge spec is also online. I will put a link to that in the Hacker Lab that will be opening up. So if you want to look at this later on, I'll leave the Hacker Lab up for a while so you can experiment with it yourself if you decide to buy a Buspirate after SAINTCON. And then we're going to hook up our pins into the clock and our data. And let's see if I hook this up right. So if we type the macro 2, nothing happened. That's embarrassing. Okay. Badge does not like that, which means I probably hooked something up wrong. Okay. So it looks like Huddy is sending out some extra commands, which is obnoxious. So it's set to COM5 and 11.5. Oh wait, this is SSH. So we'll set this, we'll reconnect to COM5 and 11.5200, and then we'll come here. If there's ever something you're noticing is acting weird, you can always come down to your settings in serial, and looks normal, so I don't know why that wasn't working. I guess we won't get to see a live view of what's going across the badge, which is really weird. But anyway, so you can kind of see when the tools decide to work. You know, this is a demo, so of course it's not working. So you can kind of start to see the usefulness of this. You can, like the Buspirate itself, here I have a normal one. So the Buspirate itself, it can, you know, it's $30, so they're not too terribly expensive. And you can see what's going on in a circuit as you're debugging it, or you can simulate different communication protocols, which are really hard. Like, you don't want to have to open up a brand new Arduino sketch, if that's your platform of choice, and go through and write your entire debug code on an Arduino when you can open up something simple like this and throw your commands at it, and it just works, which is the real power. And in fact, the couple of bugs that this has, because they're doing all these stuff in software instead of hardware, so there are a couple of little bugs, is going to be fixed with the upcoming Buspirate that Dangerous Prototypes just released, because it's using that PGA, so it supports everything in hardware. Yeah, sorry that demonstration didn't work, but like I said, the Hacker Lab mini badges are over at Hacker Labs, and I will have a couple Buspirates set up so you can write to the little black chip on the back of the Hacker Labs mini badge, so you can set your own custom messages, have the scroll and the text, because, you know, that's awesome. And then I guess, do any of you have any questions?
What chips do which mini badges support this?
So this year, the mini badges that support I2C, well, there's only one chip that supports what we're doing on the Buspirate. And then I know that Stage 2 Security, they made a mini badge. It's the little like red falcon on the black text on the background that does have some I2C, but it's fiddly, so it's not super useful. There weren't a lot because last year a lot of people did I2C wrong because they didn't quite read the spec correctly, and so a lot of people were worried about doing it again this year because they did something wrong last year and they didn't want to break it again this year, which if you get a Buspirate, you know, it's the tool I use almost every day. I mess with circuits. It's really easy to figure out if your thing supports it or not. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, you? This one?
Yeah.
So, this specific jumper cable is from SparkFun. And so if you buy the SparkFun Buspirate kit, you can get it with them. But most times, you can just use any female-to-female jumper wires. Basically, the Buspirate has a shrouded male connector, so any female connectors that plug in there will work just fine. So you can use your own wires if you want. Yeah.
How does the bus handle multiple badges trying to communicate at the same time?
So that's why it's all set up in addressing. The badges are not supposed. The mini badges are not supposed to reply if they didn't have their address. If they specifically didn't have their address pulled, and so that's why I'm sending the stop bit to change addresses. So until that stop bit's been sent, the bus, everything on the bus assumes that the communication is with only that address.
So if I got two badges with two different messages, would they like?
If they both have the same address, it could cause some problems. So these chips do support a way of changing their address, but I didn't look that up. And you start digging into configuration bits, which these have lock bits, so you can permanently lock things from being read to or written from. So I figured it'd be a good idea just to avoid those for now. I will put a link to the data sheet if you want to try and decipher that and figure out how to change the address. So you can have I think you can set 4 or 5 different addresses, so you can have 4 or 5 different messages. The badge updates every 30 seconds to display a message. Any other questions?
When's the lab?
So the lab is next to the hacker space setup. There's a couple of guys with laptops, and so I'll just go over there and drop a couple of these off once I get them all set up.